Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Monday Musings-Danny SportsWrap, and I hope you enjoyed a warmer than we've seen recently weekend. I don't know if we could call it warm, but certainly it was nice enough to go out and do some chores and go outside without a heavy coat on, so that was nice and refreshing, and I hope you had a good time with that, and I imagine you spent a little bit of time paying attention to college basketball, especially if you're a Kansas Jayhawk fan, and the news is certainly good there. Missouri didn't play. They have a couple of games left. Kansas is the first Big 12 team to finish all of their games. Kansas State continues to have trouble scoring, and this time defense wasn't good enough as they got wiped out by West Virginia, but there are still some decent signs as they come down the stretch, and they have one more game remaining. They'll wait a week to play it, and they will play against Iowa State, which probably will be a desperate team to avoid the ignominy of going winless in the league. Baylor, of course, was the victim of Kansas, and they get their first loss, and they have 3 tough games, so theoretically they haven't necessarily won the Big 12 yet, but they're pretty darn close to it. We've got some other things to talk about as far as the Kansas City Royals, where no news is generally good news, and optimism is a good thing to have at this time of year. And we've got some notes from around the world of sports and a couple of cool golf stories and some interesting golf to talk about as well, as big championships being performed over the weekend, and one of the legends of the game, Annika Sorenstam, making a little bit of noise, too. She made the cut at the LPGA tournament. Didn't play particularly well on the weekend, but still, for somebody who hasn't played much competitive golf, that was really a testimony to somebody's greatness that they go out and actually make the cut while they've hardly played any golf and they're 51 years old. So, anyway, lots to talk about on Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap, and we kick it off next. Remember, if you are listening to this podcast, wherever you listen to it, if the spot where you has a follower button and you haven't clicked on that yet to follow the Reasonably Irreverent podcast, please do that. It'll make life easier for you. You'll get notifications and the like, and it's absolutely free to follow somebody. So go ahead and do it, and I'd appreciate that. And Monday Musing starts cranking up next with you following it.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. I'm here with Joe Spiker, owner of Easton Roofing, and boy, we had to negotiate a million things in 2020, but Easton Roofing navigated them all. As 2021 rolls out, what should we expect this coming storm season?
Well, Danny, it'll be the same thing as it is every year. The storms come, and you've got the guys out knocking on doors offering quote-unquote free inspections. Be wary as a homeowner. If somebody's knocking on your door, they probably need the work, and if they need the work that bad, they may be willing to do something untoward to get it. So if somebody knocks on your door, says they want to give you a free inspection, just tell them have a great day and give us a call. We'll come out for free and give you a good, honest opinion as to whether or not you need to do anything at all with your roof.
And what's the best way to get in touch with Easton Roofing?
You can always find us online at eastonroofing.com or give us a call at 913-257-5426.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. It's time to visit once again with Dr. Brad Woodle of Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. And Dr. Brad, your group has reached a significant milestone in receiving a prestigious award.
Danny, we've been honored for the 10th year in a row to receive the 5-Star Service Award from Integrity Doctors. And what this means is that all of our offices throughout Kansas City have made sure to give people excellent chiropractic and acupuncture care, be on time, and do a very complete and thorough job, and have great responses back from patients.
I know firsthand because I was just treated, for instance, today by you. You have a wide range of fantastic services.
Absolutely. Chiropractic, acupuncture, physiotherapies, rehab, anything that you need to keep you well in bones, muscles, joints, and nerves.
And I can't say how much it's benefited me in the time I've coming here. Upwards of 2 years, my back has improved 100%. And you can have that same kind of treatment too. For more information and your chance for a healthier way of life, visit asfca.com/Danny today.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
College basketball first, and a very unusual feel-good story is developing around the Kansas Jayhawks. This is a year that didn't seem like it could be a feel-good story in any way, shape, or form. As we maneuvered along, Kansas was playing their worst offense ever under Bill Self. Bill Self was openly talking about how the NCAA investigation had hurt recruiting definitively. We saw all of the blue bloods basically around college basketball struggling this year, which is sort of a tacit implication or a tacit admission that what they were doing was having the advantage of paying players a little bit more and having those players stockpiled at those universities, and that hasn't happened. So all these things were coalescing for what seemed like a very disappointing season, especially when Kansas went through a 3-week period where they lost 5 out of 6 games. Well, those 5 out of 6 losses represent all but one of the losses that Kansas would end up with in the Big 12 as they finish up at 12-6. I mentioned they're the first team to complete all 18 games, and they're one of the teams that will complete all 18 games, to the point where they don't have any makeup games to do. So they set up a game with UTEP to be played this Thursday, so they won't be super rusty as they head to the postseason, a postseason that right now seems rather promising for Kansas. Do they have the talent of a Gonzaga and really even Baylor, who we'll talk about here in a minute? No, they don't. But certainly they're playing excellent defense. They've bought into what Bill Self has wanted to talk about. They have held teams to 66 points or less in the last 7 games in regulation. Texas got a few more in the only game that Kansas has lost in that stretch. That game went to overtime. But yesterday in their big win over Baylor, impressive win over Baylor, Baylor's first loss of the year, 71-58. Kansas did it with defense. They did it with outstanding inside play. They made 2/3 of their 2-point shots, as they were 66% on those particular shots. Didn't shoot it a lick from outside for 3-pointer, 3 for 16, but they did the same thing to Baylor. Made them play bad. Baylor shot more 3-pointers, 10 more, made just barely more than Kansas did at 6 for 26. They held Jared Butler, who got 30 against them the first time around, to a mere 5 points. Marcus Garrett, who likely won't repeat as the National Defensive Player of the Year because some other guys are having maybe some more high-profile seasons, and Kansas isn't quite as good, but each and every time out, he gets the other team's leading scorer, and, amazingly, somehow that person ends up having a bad game. And that's no coincidence whatsoever, as Kansas held Baylor themselves to just shooting in the 30s, and as I mentioned, 6 for 26. They clobbered him on the boards. They continue to get outstanding board play from Jalen Wilson. Wilson had 14 rebounds yesterday. He's averaging 12 rebounds over his last 7 games. He's come out of that flat spell he had, and the one thing that he has done on a consistent basis, he didn't score much on Saturday with just 7 points, but the rebounds night in, night out has been there, and in fact, he's probably part of the reason that David McCormick is not putting up very good rebound totals. He only had 3 yesterday, ended up fouling out in the game and didn't play as many minutes as he might have, 25, and had 3 rebounds. And I'm sure that's still disappointing to Bill Self, but Wilson is gobbling up so many rebounds that there's not as many for him to go get. And Kansas didn't really need great scoring. Ochai Agbaji had only 7 points in the game, but Christian Brown had 11, and McCormick had an outstanding game with 14 of his 20 in the first half, setting the tone for this game. And Garrett had 14 points, 7 rebounds, a couple of assists, and the great defensive work. And I mentioned that this is all of a sudden turning into what looks like a team that I think during the flat spots for Kansas, people thought that looks like a team that's going to make an early exit from the NCAA tournament, if indeed they were going to make the NCAA tournament, which was never really in doubt after the great start they got off to. But they didn't look like a dangerous NCAA tournament team. And now they do, with this kind of defense that they're playing on a consistent basis, and with the ability to shoot it better than they have. Now, consistently, they haven't done it, but they have enough decent shooters on their team that if they just play this type of ball against the teams they're supposed to beat in postseason play, and then maybe save the hot shooting night for the game against a team that they're not favored against, maybe they can surprise a little bit. And I don't think it would be any stunner to see Kansas go to the Elite Eight or even the Final Four for that matter. And I don't think you would even dreamed of saying that a while back. And Bill Self seems to have found a real comfort level with this team. He went through a period, obviously, where he was criticizing him and always mentions that the team isn't tough enough and so on and so forth, and that they weren't making teams play bad, and they were giving up a lot of points. And, in fact, right before the stretch that I just talked about, they gave up 91 to West Virginia. And it came in a stretch where they were giving up a lot of points, and since then they've basically completely turned it around, and they have done an excellent job with that. And we see that they hand Baylor their first loss of the year, and Baylor's not completely done yet as far as winning the championship, because West Virginia's 10-4. They play West Virginia. Baylor has 3 difficult games at West Virginia and home for Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. So they theoretically could lose all 3 of those games, and then maybe they wouldn't win the title. I don't think that's likely to happen, but Scott Drew was openly talking about how COVID had impacted his team, that their legs weren't there, and even the players who were not affected by COVID were rusty, and that was what I've talked about on a couple of platforms over the past week or so when talking about this game. Baylor has not looked good at all in the first 2 games since they came back. And they've got a little bit of time now in 3 games to crank it back up, because they looked like a team that was one of the 2, 3, 4 best teams in the country, and they didn't look anything like that in their tight win during the week. And then in the game, the loss to Kansas on Saturday, and they'll have to play a lot better than that, or they'll create a little drama as far as things are concerned in the Big 12. But Kansas will, in all likelihood, finish 3rd in the league, and there's nothing really horrendous about that, particularly how they had looked during that 3-week stretch. So, as I mentioned, a season that I think Kansas fans were either scratching their head or not paying as much attention or just flat not enjoying. I think there's a certain sense of satisfaction right now for the team and a little bit of excitement as we head to a very, very unusual NCAA tournament. Kansas State had a couple of nice nights, and they didn't have a good afternoon on Saturday afternoon. They hung in there in the first half in a low-scoring, I think 26-22 was the halftime score. But then West Virginia had far too much. Kansas State was still scoring at the same rate and ended up in the 40s again, and West Virginia won going away. And West Virginia now 10-4 in league play, and they've played good basketball this year. And K-State's just not a match for teams like that right now because they can't score, but they continue to defend and scrap, and so a little bit of satisfaction for that team as they've gone down the stretch, and maybe just a little bit of the heat turned off Bruce Weber. I don't think he was ever really very much in danger of potentially being somebody who would get fired. It just seemed like an unusual year, and it seemed like the athletic director was in his corner, and that because he was playing all these young players, it seemed like he had the knowledge that he was pretty safe. But when you lose game after game after game after game, 13 games in a row, that's not good. But then they popped in a couple of wins, and a loss against West Virginia certainly is no shame whatsoever. And they get one more game, as I mentioned before. They'll play Iowa State. It'd be a nice way to wrap things up. It is a home game. They will have a senior night, as it were, and they would have a lot of fun with that particular matchup against Iowa State and try to keep them winless and just have a decent feeling heading into the Big 12 tournament, maybe pull off a upset there and end the season on a brighter note. Missouri could use a little dose of that. They have certainly hit their flat spot late in the year, and they've lost 4 out of 5. They're a 500 team now in the SEC. They've got 2 games remaining. They have gone. We've seen Kansas in the other direction has built themselves all the way up to, in bracketology a couple days ago, they were a 4 seed, and obviously a win over Baylor is only going to increase that, so they could perhaps get up to the 3 line as far as seeding is concerned, which is not nearly as important in the NCAA tournament this year with all the neutral site games as it normally would be when you get to sort of have your locations where your fans can get to more easily, and there's limited fans anyway. Although it was announced yesterday that those fans who want to venture to Indianapolis and the Indianapolis area, they were seriously easing the restrictions on bars and restaurants up to 75% capacity and full hours and things like that. So if you're a Kansas fan who's heading to Indianapolis and want to continue that NCAA tradition, you'll have things to do if that is something you want to do. But Missouri now, in that latest bracketology, was on the 7 line, so their games against Florida and LSU that they'll play this week are certainly important for them as far as the arc of the season is concerned. At one point in time, it appeared that this was going to be the rare season where Missouri fans would be able to sort of win the water cooler arguments with their friends who are Kansas fans and stick out their chest and say, hey, we're better than you guys this year. Well, that's turned in the other direction, and Cuonzo Martin's team has seemingly lost a little bit of their identity, and you just don't have a good feel for what Missouri is right now, and maybe the last week of the regular season can do something to change that. You win a couple of games this week, you finish the league at 9-7, and you go in the NCAA tournament as a 5 seed or something like that, you certainly feel great. You do the opposite, you drop a game or two, and you're just sort of not on the bubble or anything like that as far as the NCAA tournament, but just the whole feeling of being a top 10 team and having that kind of excitement, I think, has faded away. And as I said, this veteran team seems to have lost a little bit of the momentum that they had, and we'll see if they can regain it in the final week of this very unusual basketball season. Yesterday, down in Surprise, Arizona, it was real live cracks to the bat in a game where they were actually keeping score. Let's talk some baseball coming up next and some really neat notes from the world of golf as we continue on Monday Musings, Danny Sports Wrap, right here on the Reasonably Irreverent Podcast.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
I'm here with David Schmidt from Private Capital. And David, tell us more about your outstanding firm.
Thanks, Danny. Here at Private Capital, we focus on return on asset. In today's world, it is survival of the fittest. We look at things from all angles and try to figure out what works best for you. The changes we will see this next year on assets will be monumental. The key to success is knowledge. Know where you want to go, and we'll be here along the way. To find out more, give us a call at 816-221-7775.
David Schmidt from Private Capital with the best service for you. Firsthand, I have enjoyed the benefits of the CBD products from Canaway. My back feels better and better these days as a major part of my routine are the pain-relieving salve and the Pure Gold oil. And recently I had the pleasure of a treatment session using the Canaway CBD in conjunction with the Microlight 830 cold laser. The non-invasive treatment session worked wonders, and I could barely tell I was even being touched. TML 830 is the first 3B cold laser to get FDA approval, and in addition, the combination treatment with CBD is patent pending. The new smart laser is the only hands-free cold laser in the world and is used by athletic trainers, chiropractors, MDs, physical therapists, and veterinarians everywhere. You can learn more about all the great benefits from the complete line of Canaway CBD products by contacting my friend Sherry McCants at 515-208-6312. That's 515-208-6312 to get outstanding information about Canaway.
Right now, it's more important than ever to support local businesses. And 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence is open and ready to take care of you. Make 23rd Street Brewery part of your KU game day experience, whether you watch the game there or grab curbside pickup for your tailgates or watch parties.
But not just game days. 23rd Street Brewery is great any day of the week, and when the weather's nice, you can take advantage of their heaters on the patio. 23rd Street Brewery is open daily from 11:30 to 9 for dine-in, carry-out, curbside pickup, and can even help with your catering needs.
So support local and visit a Lawrence favorite, 23rd Street Brewery.
Most of us have experienced auto accidents, and it's no fun. And even less fun is trying to work on the insurance aspects afterwards and getting full value after an auto accident. I'm here with David Cowan from WreckExpert.com. And David, you have an unusual and important niche for people after an auto accident.
We have a passion to teach car wreck clients what they deserve. Getting your car repaired only fixes the damage and the paint. Getting paid for your car's loss in value is called diminished value. Chances are you've never heard of this before because most people aren't looking out for you. We help people collect thousands to tens of thousands of dollars for their car's loss in value after the wreck.
And if somebody wants to come to you for that, what's the original assessment cost them?
We offer a free review of any insurance claim to see how we can help.
You can't beat that. Great expertise and assistance in getting full value after an auto accident from David Cowan. Visit WreckExpert.com and learn more. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. You take your steps as a baseball fan, pitchers and catchers report, and then they start playing games. And yes, indeed, the Kansas City Royals started playing games yesterday, and that very, very familiar foe, the Texas Rangers, who of course share the training facility with the Royals in Surprise, Arizona, were the opponent. And we get to do something that is a great thing for a baseball fan. You get to look at a box score. Is it really meaningful or significant? No, of course not. Was the final score meaningful or significant? No, of course not. But the Royals did win yesterday by a count of 3-2. They did get a 2-for-2 performance with a home run from Sal Perez. You get to look at that 2-for-2 and 1,000 batting average in the box score and have some fun with that. Irvin Santana was the starting pitcher. It did not go that well for him in his 2 innings. He gave up a home run, gave up 2 runs, but after that, everybody else was having a feel-good time in their very brief outings in a shortened game. That game was shortened up, as a matter of fact, as they only played 7 innings of baseball. But Bubic, Lovelady, Davis, who was the winning pitcher, and Barlow all pitched scoreless baseball. And it was just fun and refreshing to think about that. And as I said, to look at a box score, that's a cool thing in baseball. And the Royals also were making news as far as the contract situation is concerned, as Hunter Dozier, by all reports, is going to sign a contract, a extension, as it were. He had already signed a 1-year contract for $2 million, but now it looks like he will agree to terms for 4 years with an option for a 5th. It guarantees him $25 million with over the 4 years, then a $10 million option for the 5th year, and accelerators that could get him out to $49 million. It's security for Hunter Dozier. It buys out 3 years of arbitration for the Royals and 1 or 2 years of free agency, depending on that 4th and 5th year and the option therein. And also, it's probably a win-win for both sides because Hunter Dozier had a fine year 2 years ago, last year, mitigated by the coronavirus and catching the coronavirus. He didn't have a very good year, but everybody kind of expects him to bounce back this year, but there's no guarantees of that. So the Royals give him security. It's a very team-friendly deal if, in fact, he becomes the player that they think he's going to be. But for Hunter Dozier, it provides financial security. So it's a good deal on both sides, and another reason for the Royals to smile. Spring training so far has been not very newsworthy, with the exception of this popping up over the weekend. Now we're starting to get games. I've said it before, I'll say it again. When there's not that much news before you start playing games, that's a good thing in spring training because that means that people aren't getting injured or there's just not negatives that are occurring. All the conversation coming out of the Royals camp is all positive. That's the way it's supposed to be in spring training. And the team is openly talking about contending for the playoffs and playing autumn baseball. Is that realistic to me? No, I don't think so. I think the Twins and the White Sox are still very much well ahead of the Kansas City Royals, but the Royals should indeed approach 500, and if they don't, I think it'll be a disappointing season. Are they going to be in playoff contention? I don't think so, but I think the Royals can and should be improved this year, and as I said, should threaten to play winning baseball. And if they don't, I think that will be a significantly negative story. But spring training is not about negative stories. It's about positive stories. And we got one yesterday. We got a couple yesterday. The Royals win a game. They're 1-0. They're undefeated in Cactus League action, and Hunter Dozier appears to be set for the long term for the Kansas City Royals at third base, and the Royals have a pretty set lineup right now and really not many questions as far as how they're going to open the season. Now, things could change as the season plays itself out. If Michael Taylor doesn't hit, obviously some other outfielders can get some playing time. If Nicky Lopez continues to not hit, it'd probably take a long time for them to get him out of the lineup because of his fielding and the fact that the Royals really do have faith in him, but they have Whit Merrifield to bounce around the field as well. So some of those things could be in place, but as far as the other positions on the field, they seem rock solid. And the Royals will have a pretty steady lineup, at least for the first couple months of the season, it would seem. There were a lot of very interesting and cool stories in the world of golf over the weekend, and it happened at all levels and basically on all tours. And I'll just do a couple of the notes that you probably wouldn't have noticed as much as some of the bigger stories, and then I'll wrap it up with a very interesting and cool off-the-beat story, as a matter of fact. On the LPGA Tour, there was a lot of news being made by Annika Sorenstam, the 50-year-old who wants to tune up for senior play later in the year, hasn't played competitive golf in 13 years, and she played in the on the LPGA Tour event in Florida, and she made the cut. It didn't go so well over the weekend, but still, for a 50-year-old to go and make the cut and be competitive after 13 years off, that just attests to the greatness of Annika Sorenstam, and it's a really neat story, but a neat American golf story for the LPGA, which is in desperate need, obviously, of American stars. The tour is dominated by international players, and yesterday Nelly Korda won, and her sister, Jessica Korda, had won the tournament before, and sort of a real piece of symmetry. The last time that sisters won on consecutive weeks in the PGA Tour, the LPGA Tour, was back in 2000 when Annika Sorenstam and her sister Charlotta won on consecutive weeks. I think that was Charlotta's only tournament win on the LPGA, but obviously over 20 years since that had happened. The Kordas, who are the daughters of Peter Korda, who was an excellent tennis player in his day, win back-to-back, and they infuse a little American pride into the LPGA Tour, which obviously is very much dominated by outstanding Asian players, and that's refreshing as far as selling tickets is concerned. It's probably not fair that Americans maybe don't care about some of the really excellent players on the LPGA Tour, but we love our homegrown players, and now they are getting a couple of stars as they win back-to-back on the LPGA Tour. On the PGA Tour, there was obviously a huge event with the World Golf Championship. It was won by Colin Morikawa, and he now has tacked that on to a PGA Championship, and certainly one of the fine young players. He won easily, winning by 3 shots, and really created very little drama as far as the tournament was concerned, but a great accomplishment for him. It's a star-studded field. All the best players are there, and Morikawa was easily the best on a very difficult golf course, and it's amazing how good these guys are, and the fact that all the talk basically all week was how difficult Concession was. The Workday Championships at Concession, it was the name of the golf tournament, and there were all kinds of disasters and high scores and triple bogeys and quadruple bogeys, but in the end, 18 under par still won the tournament. I mean, this course was fraught with disasters. There were all kinds of players who would shoot 64 one day and then 77 the next day, and so you really could put up some high numbers, but in the end, 18 under par is a lot under par, and Colin Morikawa did that. He avoided the disasters, and he won easily, but some of the other stories on the men's side were maybe more compelling, if not as, what you would say, star stories like Morikawa. One of those was in the alternate event in Puerto Rico. As Brandon Grace won the tournament, he made eagle on the 17th hole, chipping in on a par 4 from a bunker, and then he got up and down from a bunker on 18 for birdie, so he finishes eagle, birdie, and wins the tournament, his second PGA Tour win. He was a very good player in the European Tour, won early in his time on the PGA Tour, and then it had been 5 years since he won, and it comes on the heels of just 3 weeks ago, his father died from the coronavirus, and so a very emotional win, and one that was emotional and compelling not only from a personal standpoint, but also from a golf standpoint with the way that he finished off that tournament. So Brandon Grace gets his second PGA Tour victory. And the other story is just completely unique and cool story that is so much about how difficult golf is and how opportunities can pop up in the strangest of ways, and that is Trevor Simsby is a 27-year-old American player, and the World Golf Championships are basically reserved for the best players in the world, and it's pretty hard to qualify. There are only 72 players in this field this weekend, and the way you qualify, the easiest way you can qualify is by by being in the top 50 in the world. For instance, Jordan Spieth did not play in this tournament because he's not in the top 50 in the world right now. He's improving of late, but still not in the field. Top 50 in the world's really very difficult to attain, and that's why players strive so hard. You'll see a guy who's at 52nd, 53rd. He wants to play a lot, so he gets into these events, which have guaranteed money. You win $30,000 for finishing last, as a matter of fact. Anyway, Simsby is a completely unique story because he hardly has any status. He's ranked 417th in the world heading into this tournament, and the way he got in is such an unusual golf story. He was one of the two players who got spots because they were in the two top spots in the Asian Tour Order of Merit. Well, the kicker to this story is the fact that the Asian Tour only played 2 tournaments last year before they were shut down by the coronavirus. So he won one of those tournaments, the Malaysian Open. Now, that's obviously to his credit, but even with that, he hadn't actually played a competitive golf tournament since that tournament in last July. He had no place to play. He had no status. He has been a player who struggled mightily with his game. He's only played 16 Korn Ferry Tour events in his career and has missed the cut in 13 of those. But he did find lightning in a bottle that one week in Malaysia, and because they stopped, there were only 2 tournaments. He was a winner in one of them, and so he was in the top 2. That's how he got his exemption and got into this tournament. And you might think, well, this guy's going to just finish dead last. There's no cut, so he could have piled up some really bad scores and kind of embarrassed himself because he hadn't been playing much competitive golf. Well, he did anything but that. Now, despite the fact that he cost himself about $25,000 by bogeying 3 of the last 5 holes, it was a memorable weekend for one Trevor Simsby, as he not only finished in a tie for 33rd, which is respectable, to say the least, upper half of the field, made himself about $60,000, and on Saturday, he made a hole-in-one. And basically, he made history and something that he'd be able to, if he never does anything really even halfway decent in his golf career from this point forward, he can say, at this point in time, that he is one of only 2 players who has made a hole-in-one in his first PGA Tour tournament. And the other one is Tiger Woods. So Tiger Woods and Trevor Simsby share the honor of being the only players, and Tiger did it in, I think, the 1997 Milwaukee Open. It was definitely the Milwaukee Open, but I think it was 97. He made a hole-in-one, and on Saturday, Simsby made a hole-in-one, so he and Tiger Woods share that particular record. And what an incredible story, and now I'll be watching out to see what Trevor Simsby does. I don't think he gets any kind of exemption into next week or anything like that with a 33rd finish, but he's got some money in his bank account and certainly might pick up a sponsor or two, and that is indeed a cool story and something that golf really is kind of unique in being able to provide these kind of Cinderella moments as far as someone who was really just kind of lost in the woods. When he went to Malaysia, he basically moved in with a friend of his and was trying to just sort of restart his career outside of America, and he won that tournament. And not only, here's another final note on that, the tournament wasn't even 72 holes. They had weather problems, so it was just a 54-hole event, and he won it in a playoff over 2 other players, and eventually that led to him getting, I saw him on television for at least 15 minutes in total, and he once upon a time was he carried a standard at the 2008 U.S. Open at Torrey Pines when he was 17 years old, or 15 years old, I believe, and he finished. He did it in the final round in the morning. His group finished, and then somebody said to him, hey, stay around because you were a standard bearer. You might have the opportunity to get to walk inside the ropes with one of the final groups, and he did so and walked the final 18 holes with Rocco Mediate, who eventually would, of course, be in a playoff with Tiger in that memorable U.S. Open where Tiger won playing on a broken leg. So a kind of circular, incredible story for one Trevor Simsby wraps up this edition of Monday Musings, Danny SportsWrap, and it's part of the Reasonably Irreverent podcast, and you can catch a wide variety of things here. And, of course, we also are over at patreon.com/Danny Clinkscale for the Between the Lines 2.0 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And make sure, as I mentioned before, that wherever you hear your podcast, if there's a following button there, just press that, and that is completely free. And it will provide you, me, with more statistics and ability to promote the Reasonably Irreverent podcast and get you some notifications and things as well. So do that for me, and continue to join me on the Reasonably Irreverent podcast and on Mondays, Monday Musings.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like
Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.